Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to Quadriga, where we're looking at the fallout from the nuclear summit in Singapore between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Now, at the meeting, there were historic handshakes followed by the signing of what was described as a comprehensive document in which Trump and Kim promised to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The question is, though, will these two volatile leaders keep their promises? And is this agreement only going to upgrade the international standing of a murderous dictator? So our question here on Quadriga this week is Trump and Kim a big deal? And to answer that question, I'm joined here in the studio by Sascha Hach, an expert on disarmament with ICAN Germany, the Nobel Prize-winning organisation for the abolition of nuclear weapons. He says Trump and Kim's deal doesn't go far enough. To succeed, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula has to be embedded in international law, and other actors need to be involved. Also with us is Matthew Karnitschnig, Chief Europe Correspondent for Politico. And Matthew argues that it may be hard for many to accept, but Trump was right. Just getting the North Koreans to the table to seriously talk peace is an impressive outcome. And a very warm welcome too to Dahye Yim from the Korea Communication Research Center here in Berlin, who believes that properly knowing and understanding North Korea is the key to peace. Well, thank you, all three of you, for being here with me today on Quadriga. I'd like to begin with you, Dahye. And South Korean President Moon Jae-in has been quoted as saying that the Trump-Kim summit opens the way to a new era of peace and cooperation on the Korean Peninsula. Do you agree?
I totally agree.
You totally agree, yeah?
Yes, it's a very historical moment.
Yeah.
That with the South and North Korean summit in April, and also the following summit, which happened a few days ago. I think it's very historical that North Korea came to the negotiation table on the same level with US. And also when we look at the articles of the agreement, the article number 1 was not denuclearization, which is very unfair for which could be unfair for North Korea. However, they first said it that the new relationship between US and North Korea would be the priority for them, and also the peace regime should be protected. And also, US have acknowledged to protect the regime of North Korea and to give security protections for North Korea, which is a big success, which I believe in this summit. And also, they have the article of denuclearization, which has some controversies. However, for this step, it's the first step of US and North Korea right now. And for the first step, I think it was enough and it's totally successful.
So should I assume, given everything that you're saying, that there is a mood of euphoria in South Korea at this point in time?
Yes, we find more hope from this moment. And I assume, and I also personally experienced, that many Koreans had fear in their heart, fear of war. And this was hidden for them, inside of them for many years and for their entire lives. Because when they face the fear that is inside their heart, the fear of war from outside powers, then they cannot survive for their whole life because they know how devastating the situation will be. However, now they overcame somewhat in a way of their fears. They're trying to step further, and they are making festivals out of. They are feasting this summit, and also they found some hope in the Korean Peninsula that peace can actually be made in this Korean Peninsula.
So a very positive take. Matthew Karnitschnig, Donald Trump, the deal maker, has scored a great victory in Singapore.
Well, it might be too early to claim great victory, but I think just the fact, as I said, that he got the North Koreans to the table and that they're discussing substantive issues or will be in the coming weeks is something that one shouldn't downplay at this point. I think there's always a lot of skepticism, and you hear these arguments. Well, he's putting Kim on a pedestal, or he's allowing him to have this sort of perception that he's a world leader, that he's legitimizing him. At the same time, though, I feel this is exactly what we've done with Putin for years. And here we have a leader who is, in many people's view, responsible for using chemical weapons in Syria, who has annexed Crimea, as we know, who is fighting a war in Ukraine. And in Europe, nobody has a problem with talking to
so two
Putin.
wrongs make a right.
Well, I don't think that they're necessarily two wrongs make a right. I think that if you argue, as many people do, that dialogue is important in diplomacy, that you're not going to get anywhere if you don't speak to the other side, then I don't see how you can be against a meeting like this, because you also have to acknowledge that the North Koreans have these nuclear weapons now. And we can't change that. It's too late. You know, the period where we can ignore them, as previous American administrations did, essentially, thinking that, well, we're going to just pressure them with sanctions and at some point they're going to come to the table. Well, that strategy didn't work. And now we're at a stage, I think, where they're not just working on nuclear weapons. They don't just have one nuclear weapon. They apparently have an entire arsenal. And I think what Trump has done is basically to acknowledge this reality and say, we can't pretend that this isn't the case anymore. We have to deal with them. And if that means legitimizing him, then so be it. I mean, what is really the consequence of that? What is the negative consequence in the long term of legitimizing this regime?
Sascha Hach, I would be interested to hear what your answer to that question is.
Yeah, my eyes are getting more and more critical. No, I agree that it is a historic meeting. I also agree that it's a great progress, and it's absolutely important to keep in touch and to have
the world is a safer place.
To have dialogue. In a certain way, yes, because who does not threat, who does not shoot but talk, is certainly giving more security to the world. What I'm worrying about is how long this agreement or this declaration will last when this testosterone cloud of Singapore is left. And also, I would like to raise the question, who is actually behind this cloud, or are there other actors who have also contributed to this meeting? Namely the South Korean Prime Minister, Moon Jae-in, and also China in a certain way. We know that Kim Jong-un has been twice to China before this meeting took place. So we should not believe or trust too much in this two-man show that Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un were presenting us, but also consider all the relevant actors that played a main role in the Korean War, and acknowledge that they, from now on, also have to be integrated in any process of disarmament and peace in the region, namely China and South Korea. It cannot be just an issue between the US and North Korea. And second, we have to embed this declaration, which is non-binding, without any verification system or time-bound plan. We have to embed this in international public law, so that we have a structure which makes this agreement, which gives this agreement a perspective. And the treaty we are proposing is the one of the prohibition of the nuclear weapons.
Okay, Matthew, briefly, you wanted to say ourselves.
No, I would just say, I mean, I agree that China is involved, should be involved. I don't think that you can have lasting peace in Korea, obviously, without South Korea. But South Korea is really the one who's been pushing this. And if you look at what President Moon said when it looked like the meeting wasn't going to happen, and the South Korean reaction, I mean, they were absolutely essential to this process. And China, I mean, given that China is really the country that enabled North Korea to have these weapons in the first place by standing by and allowing this nuclear program to progress. It's clear that this is all of one piece, but I think this is exactly what you want. You don't just want the United States and the North Koreans to be sitting down at the table, and Russia is going to have to be involved in this process at some point too. But I do think that in the end, if it does progress, and in my view, this was just a first step, it was more of an icebreaker than anything. It would have been unrealistic to think that Trump would come out of that meeting with a sort of full-blown treaty that was, ready to be signed, whereby the North Koreans would be foregoing nuclear weapons forever. But at least, he has created an atmosphere, it appears, where these negotiations can continue. We've been here before in the past, but again, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think that if it had been a different president, if it weren't Trump, many of the criticisms that you're hearing now would not be, would not be out there.
Let's just remind ourselves of where we have come from in the last couple of months. It all began, of course, with a conventional slanging match that turned into a nuclear arms slanging match. Here are some images.
The run-up to the summit was horribly entertaining.
Little Rocket Man, Little Rocket Man, Rocket Man is a sick puppy.
Kim was quick to shoot back. I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged US dotard with fire. Trump was not to be trumped.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
The question of central concern, who has the bigger and more powerful nuclear button? The two seem to get along, and they know how to put on a show.
Everybody plays games, you know that.
Are their war games over now?
Who should take the biggest credit for the breakthrough that we have seen? Donald Trump or somebody else?
Well, I think this is a very guided question. However, to be honest, I would like to give the biggest credit to President Moon Jae-in, who is the current president of South Korea, because firstly, he has changed the game. He led Korea, the two Koreas, to be in the center of the negotiation table. So now it's not about other states talking about the situation in Korean Peninsula, but President Moon Jae-in has led the negotiations of other countries. And secondly, I believe that President Moon Jae-in has a big credit to continue this summit. The US and North Korea summit was about to be collapsed. However, he called North Korea, Kim Jong-un, right away, and he talked with Kim Jong-un, and he negotiated with him, and he led North Korea and US to finally meet together. So whether or not this will last long or it will just be a show, as some people have argued, I think that the fact that US and North Korea has met on the negotiation table has a big meaning in the historical perspective. And for this, I believe that President Moon Jae-in made a big role.
So, Sascha, the situation has moved forward, but everybody is saying there are problems with the timetabling and especially with the details of this agreement. What's missing?
It is missing a verification. It is missing actually concrete disarmament steps and a plan for disarmament. But it is clear for this meeting, it was nobody expected really that they could, within the time they had, have such a result. However, we need now a legal structure in which we integrate this peace process. And this legal structure has to consider both sides, not only the North Korean side. When we are talking about the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, we have only an obligation, this declaration by North Korea, none of the US. But there is the US nuclear umbrella protecting South Korea, which has a geopolitical impact on the whole region. So we also have to address this issue. That means we need a legal framework that integrates both sides, not only the nuclear weapon state, but also the state under the umbrella. And the only legal system that I know which takes this into account is currently this new treaty on the prohibition on nuclear weapons, which also outlaws the threat of nuclear weapons and nuclear sharing. So this could be a framework or structure in which we could move forward.
How long would it take to put that framework in place?
Sincerely, I believe that you have to take a long time into account. Technically,
but that is precisely what the world and what the impatient Donald Trump does not want. He wants this to happen very quickly indeed. Is it in any way possible for denuclearization to happen, I don't know, in a framework of a year, let's say?
Technically, yes. It is very easily possible to dismantle the nuclear weapons is if there is political will. But you said the world wants, and then you then you corrected Donald Trump once. I think this is an important difference because I think the priority of South Korea, of course, they are threatened by the nuclear weapons, but they want to move forward with the reconciliation and peace process, and they are okay with a step-by-step approach. China is as well. And I think that we need time for such a disarmament process. We just need a security and a sound, lasting framework.
It was interesting at the press conference, Donald Trump, when he was asked about the time frame, a timeline for any or all of this, he said he would like it to happen as fast as it can be done mechanically and physically. I thought that was very interesting. And you're saying it could actually happen within a year.
Yeah, I mean, it could even happen in a few months if you withdraw, if you remove the warheads and bring them to the US to dismantle them. Yeah, but it is not a technical question; it is a political question. And as long as nuclear weapons remain the geopolitical center of the world order and remain so attractive for countries to attain, to first protect themselves, but also to have this prestige to talk to the most powerful man of the world, as we just saw it, as long as we don't solve this geopolitical problem of status of nuclear weapons, we will not see North Korea getting rid of its nuclear weapons very quickly, because that's the very function of nuclear weapons for Kim.
When we talk about Kim, what can you tell us about Kim to help us to understand the man, get a little bit closer to the man?
Well, I don't personally know Kim. Sure. However, what I can say is I feel personally that he was quite genuine, and I think he was consistent with what he really wants. North Korea wants their regime to be acknowledged and protected. That's the #1 priority for them. We have to really think about why they are trying to possess and develop nuclear weapons. Is it because they want to make a war against the other countries? It's obvious that they can't really win the war. So it's just their own button or leverage for them to make the status quo in North Korea to be stabilized. So if we acknowledge North Korea at the same level, then North Korea will step forward the denuclearization process. And in this sense, I found that Kim Jong-un was quite genuine in his way during the last two summits. And also what I find from him is that he is eager for peace in the Korean Peninsula. He wants to denuclearize nuclear weapons if his regime is protected and if North Korean security can be protected. So in this sense, I find him very positive toward the peace regime in the Korean Peninsula and also in the global society. And also he is quite eager to denuclearize the nuclear weapons in North Korea. However, I found a problem in many media and also the public opinions. They only put conditions for denuclearization. They only focus on denuclearization of North Korea. Why don't they put any conditions for US or the other countries not to intervene into the regime or not to provocate them anymore? I think this kind of very filtered and prejudiced viewpoint should actually change in order for this summit or in order for this agreement to last long. If North Korea is not acknowledged by the global society, or if there are so many suspicions behind Kim Jong-un's purpose, which he never said about, then this agreement will not last long, of course. And of course, the peace regime cannot last long.
OK, interesting insights. Despite all that, the fact remains Chairman Kim of North Korea is without doubt an autocrat, a despot. And the big question surrounding his future is, will he be able to survive the process of transformation that now at least looks possible on the Korean Peninsula?
The troops the North Korean dictator commands are not toy soldiers. The region is one of the world's most heavily militarized, and North Korea claims to have nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un is unpredictable, and it's not clear how firm his grip on power really is. Starting in 2010, he was groomed as successor to his father Kim Jong-il, the next object of adoration in the personality cult surrounding the Kim dynasty. Upon assuming power, Kim Jong-un was quick to do away with perceived threats, such as his uncle, Jang Song-tik, who was arrested, subjected to a show trial and executed. He had been number 2 in the leadership. North Korea presents itself as a model communist state, cautiously opening up to the outside world. Behind the scenes, however, famine, torture, labor camps, according to people who managed to flee. What does Kim really want?
Good question, Matthew. What does Kim really want?
Well, I tend to think that he wants a deal, and I think it is important to remember that this is an autocratic regime. Some would say it's a rogue regime, and if you look at what they've done in the past, you know, in counterfeiting U.S. currency, which was a huge operation that they undertook, or the cyber warfare that they've engaged in, it's clear that this nuclear push that they've undertaken over the past couple of decades is aimed at some point getting something back. And I think that although a lot of people laugh at Trump and this deal-making sort of aura that he tries to project, that he might have found the one country where this could actually work. And I think you felt that a little bit at this summit. I mean, if you remember, you know, Kim came in on a Chinese airliner. I think it shows that this is not a country that is, you know, particularly wealthy in reality, that has the kind of resources that it would like to have. He made a big deal about seeing Trump's limousine and this kind of thing. So I do think it is the kind of leader where Trump's approach to diplomacy, as it were, could actually work.
And if Kim wants a deal, does he want a deal where he keeps the nuclear weapons or where he loses the nuclear weapons?
Well, he won't get a deal if he doesn't lose the nuclear weapons. Of course, I think he would prefer to keep the nuclear weapons. That's not going to happen. The U.S. won't do a deal.
How can he survive in that scenario? He's going to be washed away by history.
Well, I think if he you know, agrees to open up North Korea and get some sort of economic benefits in return for giving up the nuclear weapons, which is exactly what Trump has offered him, then he will have something that he can, you know, sell to the rest of the regime. And you know, it's important to remember there is this whole class of leaders in North Korea behind him. I thought it was interesting in the run-up to the summit that he fired a couple of the top generals, which you know, many thought is an indication that not everybody is really on board with this plan. But you know, clearly he's the man in control, he and his sister, and they're pushing this through. And I don't think that they would have embarked on this course and gone this far if they weren't really willing to give something up.
Interesting. Sascha, how similar is the situation in Korea today to the situation in Germany back in the 1980s, the late 1980s? I know it's a tough question, but I'm very interested in what you have to say.
I was very young in the late 80s in Germany. We have talked about that in the Mask, actually, that the situation is very different in my point of view. So economically speaking, politically speaking, we cannot compare the two systems, and also with regard of nuclear weapons and the role of nuclear weapons. Also the international alliance structure was completely different if we compare Germany to Korea today. However, what I would still like to promote or keep in mind is that the German example as well as the Vietnamese example show that there is hope, even for cases, that's maybe a similarity, cases which seem desperate and without hope. And the perspective that we have now, that the talks and the dialogue continues with concrete trust-building measures, for example, with the bodies of the remnants of the Korean War being moved, repatriated, which means talks and meetings will continue. This perspectives, I think, gives truly hope to have a process of reconciliation.
Perhaps the final word, more or less. Do the people of North and South Korea want reunification? Do they still want reunification?
Yes, they want reunification because we had a provincial election yesterday, and out of 17 provinces, 14 provinces have voted for the Democratic Party, which is the party of the President Moon. And this shows how much support are given by the citizens of Korea for the reunification process and the peace regime. And I really want to say that we really have to know North Korea well, we have to accept that we don't know North Korea about we don't know about North Korea that much because we are only watching the news that are filtered by the media and by the majorities. So we have to listen carefully of what really North Korea wants and what they really want to pursue. And this is the only way that we can step towards peace. And this is what I really want to say.
I once, with a fellow journalist, walked along the Berlin Wall and we were looking at it and wondering whether it would disappear in our lifetimes. And each of us said, well, maybe if we're very lucky indeed. Within a year, it had gone. How soon do you think we might see a reunion in South Korea, in North Korea? In your lifetime? Or
I hope before I pass away, I want to see the reunification process, of course, but I think it's very dangerous if we make it too quick because we have to have some steps before we make the real reunification, and we have to make it peaceful.
OK, thanks very much all of you for joining me here today to talk about the Singapore summit. Great stuff. If you've enjoyed the show as much as I have, do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.